Appendix 10 of the Meaning of the Holy Quran by Abdullah Yusuf Ali. I want to admit the word that's just some Christian insult about even monotheist religions until 1967. So, ancient forms of worship. From prehistoric times, man has sought to worship powers of nature or symbols representing those powers or idols representing those symbols. In vulgar minds, they become debased superstitions and seem to come into competition with the worship of the one true God. The 5 names mentioned in Surah 71:23 represent some of the oldest cults before the flood as well as after the flood. You know, it wasn't a worldwide flood, but you know what I mean. Though the names themselves are in the form in which they were worshipped by local Arab tribes. The names of the tribes have been preserved to us by the commentators, but they are of no more than archaeological interest to us now. But the names of the false gods are interesting to us from the point of view of comparative religion, as under one form or another, such cults exist in countries which have not accepted the gospel of unity, as they have always existed since man turned from his maker and sustainer to the worship of the created things or invented fancies. And so there's different names of the old ones, and there's the Indian, the Hindu, the Persian, the other languages referred to this same group of 5 more or less, not necessarily the same forms, but the name of the 5 ones that are falsely called gods and the symbols under which they were represented were as follows: Wad, man, manly power; Suwa, woman, mutability, beauty; Yaguth, lion or bull, bird strength; Ya'uk, horse, swiftness; Nasr, eagle, or vulture or falcon, sharp sight, insight. So, name, shape, quality represented. It is not clear whether these names are to be connected with true Arabic verbal roots or are merely Arabicized forms of names derived from foreign cults, such as those of Babylonia or Assyria, the region of Noah's flood. The latter supposition is probable, even in the case of Wad, affection, love, and Nasr, eagle, which are good Arabic words. It is doubtful whether they are not, in this connection, translations are corruptions of words denoting foreign cults. And so that verse is وَقَالَ لَا تَذَرُنَّ آلِهَتَكُمْ وَلَا تَذَرُنَّ وَدًّا وَلَا سُوَاعًا وَلَا يَغُوثَ وَيَعُوقَ وَنَسْرَ. Okay, so it is a scene. In studying ancient comparative mythologies, we must never forget the following facts. Men's ideas of God always tend to be anthropomorphic. The qualities which they admire, they transfer to their concept of Godhead. But fear in primitive man also leads to the transfer of anything mysterious or imagined to be injurious to the pantheon. Such things have to be placated in order that they may not injure man. Thus, in popular Hinduism, the goddess of smallpox, which causes terror over an ignorant countryside, has to be worshipped, placated, or appeased with sacrifice. This leads to the worship of animals noxious to man, such as serpent worship, which has prevailed and still prevails in many primitive areas. In ancient Egyptian mythology, The crocodile, so common in the Nile, the dog, the bull, and the ibis were worshipped both literally and symbolically. But as men's knowledge grows, they observe the wonderful heavenly bodies and their motions. They begin to feel their sublimity, beauty, and mystery, and they transfer their worship to the heavenly bodies. The first astronomers in the ancient world were the Babylonians and Chaldeans. Among them was Abraham's homeland. The allegory of Abraham in Surah 6, 74 through 82 points to the importance of the cult of the worship of heavenly bodies and the fallacy for them. It is those who believe and confuse not their beliefs with wrong that are truly in security, for they are on the right guidance. 682. The Sabaean worship of heavenly bodies in Arabia had probably its source in Chaldea. C. 262. A further refined step is to worship abstractions, to treat concrete things as symbols of abstract qualities which they represent. For example, the planet Saturn, with its slow motion, was treated as phlegmatic and evil. The planet Mars, with its fiery red light, was treated as betokening war and havoc and evil, and so on. Jupiter, with its magnificent golden light, was treated as lucky and benignant to any who came under its influence. Venus became the symbol and the goddess of carnal love. The Arabs erected Time, daughter, into a deity existing from eternity to eternity and dispersing good and ill fortune to man. Zirvan in Persian. The ancient Agyan religion treated the vital principle in the same way, as spontaneous and eternal, and traces of this are found in many religions, ancient and modern. The next step was to reincarnate, as it were, these qualities in beings of flesh and blood, with lives, feelings, and passions like those of ordinary men and women, and to fill up a confused pantheon with what they considered to be gods and goddesses that quarreled, hated, loved, were jealous, and suffered or enjoyed life like human beings. In such a pantheon, there was room for demigods and real human heroes that were worshipped as gods. The Greek poets and artists were past masters in carrying out this process, under cover of which they discussed profound human problems with great power. They made religion dramatic, while they gained in humanism. They lost in purer spiritual conceptions, which lift the divine world far above the futilities and crimes of this life. Hierarchical Christianity has suffered from this inheritance of the Greek tradition. And you find that you don't need to separate the development of human qualities from the other. And this is what I find is the others, people, I follow Paul, and someone was telling me it's like everything which they seem to do wrong in life, every wrong belief can kind of be linked to that. And by wrong action, I mean like how they treat others and that sort of thing. There was a commingling of peoples and cultures. Several of these ideas and processes got mixed up together. What was considered to be gods and goddesses of different origins were identified with one another. Artemis, the chaste virgin huntress. The chaste virgin huntress was considered to be goddess of the Greek pantheon and was identified with Diana of the Romans, Diana of the Ephesians, representing the teeming light of nature, and Selene, the cold moon entity. Similar, Diana was identified with Egyptian Isis, and Diana's twin brother Apollo the sun with the Egyptian Osiris, forces of nature, animals, trees, qualities, astronomical bodies, and various other factors got mixed up together and formed a shapeless melody of superstitions, which are all condemned by Islam. and Islam by whatever name Islam was known before it was known as Islam, right? By that I mean, other than Arabic terms for the thing. To revert to the worship of heavenly bodies, the countless fixed stars in the firmament occupied always the same relative positions in the heavens and did not impress the imagination of the ancients like the objects which stood out vividly with mysterious laws of relative motion. A few individual stars did attract the worshippers' attention. For example, Sirius, the dog star, the brightest fixed star in the heavens, with a bluish tinge in its light, and Algol, the variable star, being Beta of the constellation Perseus, whose variation can be perceived by the naked eye in 2 or 3 nights, became connected with many legends, myths, and superstitions. It is probably Sirius that is referred to as the fixed star in the parable of Abraham 6:76. With regard to the fixed stars in the myriads, the astronomers turn their fancy to devising groups or constellations. But the moving stars or planets, each with its own individual laws of motion, stood out to them, personified, each with emotion, therefore, or will, or influence of its own. As they knew and understood them, they were 7 in number. And the moon and the sun, the 2 objects which are closely and indubitably influence the tides, the temperatures, and life on our planet, and the 2 inner planets, Mercury and Venus, which are morning and evening stars and never travel far from the sun, and Mars and Jupiter and Saturn, the outer planets whose elongations from the sun on the ecliptic can be as wide as possible. The number 7 became itself a mystical number, as explained, related to Surah 65:12, but we might want to look back here at, because, we mentioned Sirius, it could be important here to turn to Surah 53 and mention Sirius. In ayat 49, which kind of relates to terms that we hear for Osiris, but God being Lord over, and we see reference to the whole provider thing here. So, but moving on, it will be noticed that the sun and moon and the 5 planets got identified each with a living deity, god or goddess, with characteristics and qualities of its own. The solar myth was a myth of very fruitful vitality and got mixed up with many other myths and ideas. In late Roman religion, it appears in the story of Apollo, the sun entity of light and learning and of manly beauty. Twin brother to Diana, the moon entity. In ancient Egypt, it appears the myth of Horus, the falcon-eyed, or Ra, the eye which sees all things. Further, the eagle or falcon or hawk became itself identified with the sun, with its piercing light. The sun myth mixes itself up with the myth of the Nile and with the cycle of legends connected with Isis and Osiris, who were subsequently identified with the moon and the sun entities. In Babylon, the name Shamash, Arabic Shams, proclaims the glory of the sun entity, corresponding to the old Sumerian Utu of Abar, while the hymns to Surya, the sun, in the Rig Veda, and the cult of Mithra in Persia proclaim the dominance of sun worship. Moon worship was equally popular in various forms. I've already referred to the classical legends of Apollo and Diana, twin brother and sister representing the sun and the moon, the Egyptian Khonsu traversing the sky in a boat, referring to the moon, and the moon legends also got mixed up with those about the entity of magic, Thoth, and the ibis. In the Vedic religion of India, the moon entity was Soma, the lord of the planets, and the name was also applied to the juice, which was the drink of the entities. It may be noted that the moon was considered to be a male divinity in ancient India. It was also a male divinity according to the ancient Semitic religion, and the Arabic word for the moon, qamar, is the masculine gender. On the other hand, the Arabic word for the sun, shams, is of the feminine gender. The Arabs eventually looked upon the sun as a goddess and the moon as a god. And that could be related to the whole Hubal thing. God is supposed to be God over everything, so people confuse the Hubal myths as, you know the slander that people levy against God and Islam in general. Of the 5 planets, perhaps Venus as the evening star and the morning star alternately impressed itself on the imagination of astro-mythology. This planet was in different places considered both male and female. In the Bible, Isaiah 14:12, the words, "How art thou fallen, O Lucifer, son of the morning," are understood to refer to the morning star in the first instance, and by analogy to the king of Babylon. The fathers of the Christian church, on the other hand, transferred the name Lucifer to Satan, the power of evil. Mercury is a less conspicuous planet and was looked upon as a child in the family. The father and mother being the moon and the sun, are the sun and the moon according to the sex attributed to these entities, or spheres that were considered to be entities, but or else either the sun or moon was the father and Venus the mother. The sexes being interchangeable in the myths. Of the 3 outer planets, Jupiter is the most conspicuous. Indeed, after the sun and the moon, it is the most conspicuous object in the heavens and is reputed to be beneficent and to bestow good fortune. The sun and the moon being considered in a class apart, Jupiter was considered the father of the planets, and possibly his worship got occasionally mixed up with that of the sun. Mars and Saturn, as has already been stated, were considered malevolent planets to be feared for the mischief that they may do, for the pantheons worshipped powers, both of good and evil. It's remarkable that the days of the week, which are named after the 7 planets of the geocentric astronomy, and if we take them in alternate sequence, they indicate the order in which the heavens were arranged with reference to proximity to the Earth. The following table represents the grouping: Moon, Diana, Sunday; Mercury, Mercury, Tuesday; Venus, Thursday; the Sun, Apollo, Saturday; Mars, Monday; Jupiter, Wednesday; Saturn, Friday. Now, alternate sequence carried in a circle. The total number of 7 itself a mystical number, but people more commonly would associate, like, for example, the sunset Saturday, the sunset Sunday, and the rest starting with the sunset as sun, and then moon, then Mars, then Mercury, then Jupiter, then Venus, then Saturn. But one must admit that there are possible other tables that one can construct for these. These cross currents and mixtures of nature worship, astro worship, hero worship, worship of abstract qualities, etc., resulted in a medley of debasing superstitions which are summed up in the 5 names: Wad, Suwa, Yaguth, Yaok, Nasser, as noted in paragraph 3 above. The time of Noah is taken to be the peak of superstition and false worship, and the most ancient cults may thus be symbolically brought under these heads. If Wad and Suwa represented man and woman, they might as well represent human self-glorification and the worship of self as against Allah, or they might represent the worship of manly power and female beauty or other abstract qualities of that kind. On the other hand, it is possible that the worship of Jupiter and Venus itself, not mixed up with the worship of the sun-moon pair, one pair being identified with another pair in a septet. The number 7 was reduced to 5, and the 5 itself, the mystic number, might itself represent the 7 planets as they worshipped. Further, it may be that Nasser, the vulture, falcon, hawk, or eagle, the Egyptian Horus, are Ma'at kind of too, also represents a solar myth mixed up with the cult of the planets. The cross currents of astro-mythological mixtures of cults are well known to students of ancient popular religions. If the 5 names from another angle of vision represent qualities, the Wad Sua pair, the Sun, Moon, Jupiter, Venus, would represent manly power and womanly beauty or mutability, respectively, and the 3 remaining ones might represent brute strength, like that of the bull or lion, swiftness, like that of a horse, or sharpness or sight of intelligence, like that of a vulture, hawk, or eagle. And may be noted that the 5 names mentioned here to represent the very ancient religious cults are well chosen. They are not the names of the entities best known in Mecca, but rather those which survived as fragments of very ancient cults among the outlying tribes of Arabia, which were influenced by the cults of Mesopotamia, Noah's country, Turkey more like it, but the pagan entities best known in the Kaaba and around Mecca were Lat, Uzza, and Manat. Manat was also around Yathrib, which became Medina. See 53, 19 through 20. And pagan refers to material culture, so does heathen, so I don't think that's proper to reference here, but I'm having trouble turning the pages. I thought it was going to be quicker. So, أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ اللَّاتَ وَالْعُزَّى وَمَنَاةَ الثَّالِثَةَ الْأُخْرَى. And so those 3 can be referred to as, the Nakala. After which the Quraysh, on hearing this passage for the first time, shouted out a couple things that they were used to saying, but maybe we'll get into that in the other commentary. I've certainly said stuff about it before. They were all females considered to be goddesses. Lat almost certainly represents another wave of sun worship, the sun being feminine in Arabic, and in Semitic languages generally, Lat may be the original of the Greek Leto, the mother of Apollo, the sun entity. See the Encyclopedia of Islam, 1, page 380. If so, the name was brought into prehistoric times from southern Arabia by the Great Incense Route. See Surah 34, 18. To the Mediterranean, Uzza probably represents the planet Venus and can be related to Shamyaza, by the way. The origin of Manat is not quite clear, but would not be surprising if it also turned out to be astral. The 350 idols established by the pagans in the Kaaba probably represented the 360 days of an inaccurate solar calendar. This was the actual modern worship known to the Quraysh contemporary with our prophet. In sharp contrast to this is mentioned the ancient antediluvian worship under 5 heads, of which fragments persisted in outlying places. They still persist in different forms and under different names in all parts of the world, where the pure worship of Allah and unity and truth is not firmly established in the minds and hearts of men. And I guess we see that sort of thing in Gujarati has mention of things, but in Christianity, you can even say too, is the you got the Trinity, that they the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, but then they throw in the Mother Mary thing, and then throw in the other saints as like I guess the Mars grouping, right? The references, about the references, the classical work on Arabian idol worship is Ibn al-Kalbi's Kitab al-Asnam of the late 2nd century of the Hijra. The book is not easily accessible. Our doctors of religion have evinced no interest in the study of ancient cults or in comparative religion, and most of them had not before them the results of modern archaeology, but a modern school of Egyptian archaeologists is arising, which takes a great deal of interest in the antiquities of their own country, for astro worship, consult Hastings' Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics. Articles on the sun, moon, and stars as worshipped in different countries. Consult see also Sir E. A. Wallace Budge's Gods of the Egyptians, London 1904. A. H. Sayce's Religions of Ancient Egypt and Babylonia, Guildford Lectures, Edinburgh, 1902. M. Jastro's Religion of Babylonia and Assyria, Boston, 1898. E. W. Hopkins, The Religions of India, 1896. J. A. Barton's Sketches of Semitic Origins, New York, 1902. Any classical dictionary would give the details of Greek and Roman mythology. It is curious that the Indus civilization, which resembles the second pre-Diluvian culture of Elam and Mesopotamia, does not clearly disclose any signs of astro worship, but the study is still in its tentative stage. There is tree and animal worship, phallic worship, and the worship of the Great Mother. Animal worship regards strength and courage, vitality, or swiftness, as in the Arabian entities we have been considering. See also Sir John Marshall's Mohenjo-Daro and the Indus Civilization, 3 volumes, London, 1931, and Sir J. G. Fraser in his Adonis, Attis, Osiris in the 4th edition, London, 1914, volume 1. The Golden Bough, I guess, would be, is that from the Golden Bough or is it from a different book? Refers to Alatu, or Ereshkigal, as the stern queen of the internal regions. In Babylonian religion, she was considered to be a goddess of the nether regions of darkness and desolation, as her counterpart Ishtar was the chief female entity of the upper regions, are reproduction and fertility associated with the planet Venus. Don't they talk about the two in the same mouth in the whole, in Malta and certain other sites? Or I guess they don't talk about it, they have artifacts, right? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.